outdoor, but there's so much more to it. And hopefully today I can introduce and talk a little bit more about Taiwan. So just some numbers, right? I mean, these are all these surveys, and we can all interpret what these surveys mean. We are top 2 in Asia in terms of global talent, being competitive. Taiwan, there's a strong workforce. Not just they are strong in terms of their, Taiwan has this really strong DNA of making things, right? So whether that's hardware or software, but also the labor cost is very competitive. Whether that's a good or bad thing, but generally you can find very strong engineers, programmers in Taiwan. And again, generally speaking, they are very loyal to the company, so they tend to stick with the company a little bit longer. Smart city, great quality living. In terms of the G index, Global Entrepreneurship Index, we're top 3 in Asia Pacific. That's after Australia and Singapore. So again, we're very high up in terms of being established from a startup ecosystem perspective. But the most important thing, I always keep saying, right? Like people say, if I'm a startup founder now, where should I start my company? Should I start it in Hong Kong, Singapore, Korea, Japan? And there are lots of considerations, right? And one of the things people think of is, is it legal issue? Is it investment? But to me, it starts off with whether that's a good place to live, right? And Taiwan has always been ranked really high in terms of a place where people live and people enjoy the place. We have one of the highest happy index, and you get to work with friendly people, and it's just a nice environment. Okay, so a bit of a Taiwan showcase here. On the right-hand side, these are more the traditional Taiwan tech companies. So I'm sure a lot of you will know almost all of them. Foxconn, Acer, TSMC, HTC, MediaTek, ASUS. I cheated a little bit. I put in YouTube and NVIDIA because they are technically not, but one of their co-founders are Taiwanese American. And one of the things you notice is Taiwanese Americans are always very connected with Taiwan. They always come back to Taiwan and willing to share with what they've learned and what they've earned overseas. On the right-hand side, I picked up some names. I don't know how many of these names you recognize. Again, there are many startups in Taiwan. These are just some of the names. GoGo, the electric bike, which is doing really well in Taiwan. Neuron is a new startup that makes AI chips. And there are many, many of these examples. And in the middle, I sort of call these hidden gems, right? In Taiwan, you actually get to meet a lot of these companies that they stay very quiet, right? And that's kind of the Taiwan tradition. In a way, I think it's almost common again in Asia as well. So, for example, one of my friends, his company in Taiwan make lab rats, for experiments, and they are like one of the largest producers in the whole world, which we would never think of, right? And one of our colleagues, his neighbor, actually make the best carbon fibers for supercars. So most of them are actually imported from Taiwan. In fact, one of those sports fabric, all those advanced sportswear, all the fabrics, I think over 70% of them are made in Taiwan as well. And most of the people would never, even within Taiwan, would never heard of those names. So again, that's a very interesting thing when you start to consider investment and understand about Taiwan tech space. There's strong players, and they lead a lot of the startup development as well. You have some independent startups, and there's a lot in the middle. Okay, so I will talk more about the Taiwan ecosystem through the lens of what TSS, what we're doing. And I hope a lot of these observations, we'll talk about them, I believe they are not just unique to Taiwan. I assume they are quite relevant to most Asia startup ecosystems. So when you see something that you think is common to your country, your city, not, and I'll see if I hit some of those points. So yes, so we are one of the earliest, I think we're the earliest startup program in Taiwan. We're funded by the government back in 2015. And because of that, we have been building relationships with startup ecosystems throughout the world, which will show the different things that we have done. But since then, we have almost grown and witnessed the whole development of this startup ecosystem in Taiwan. Now there are so many more programs in Taiwan, which we'll show in another chart. So with that, our job has always been about building out the ecosystem. As you know, building out an ecosystem is never easy, especially in Taiwan. Everything is very new, and and I think Korea is very much at the same level, same stage. Things started maybe 6-7 years ago, when everyone just talked about startups, a lot of programs, very similar things. All right, this is a messy chart, but it's a useful one. So from our standpoint, Taiwan ecosystem, so all these are our members. So we run, a lot of people ask us, are we accelerators or incubators? I always say we are a membership program. What we mean is when startups join a program, they stick with us, hopefully forever. The reason why we do that is this is the only way we build a relationship with them that we can provide the customized service that they need. So we have over 160 members, and with that we connect them to media, accelerators, different government resources, and investors, right? These are some of the names, more the active players in Taiwan, but these are just, the first circle is just a small snapshot at the key ecosystem players in Taiwan. Okay, so back to us. So as I said, we run this membership program. We have about 160 members in Taiwan, and we get a lot of questions, right? So okay, so what is the specialties, right? Do they specialize in hardware or software? And as you can see, we have mostly software. We have a bit of hardware. Is that an indication of what Taiwan ecosystem is? Yes and no. Yes, is because we, as I said, we were the first program, right? So when we first started, we recruited a lot of teams, and we sort of grown together with them, right? So this is not an accelerator program, so they stick with us. So as you can notice, just like any sort of ecosystem, usually it started with just SaaS service or being a platform, very generic kind of internet business. That's what you expect. But gradually, all these other things, AR, VR, AI is getting stronger. In fact, some of the key industries in Taiwan, for those investors out there, I would highly suggest you look into the verticals. Of course, everyone talks about AI, IoTs, but the verticals are the key factors, right? What are the key verticals in Taiwan? E-commerce, still extremely strong. A lot of players and a lot of deep know-how in e-commerce. Medical, medtech, biotech, very strong in Taiwan. Another one, agriculture tech. Again, one of the few countries in Asia which is still strong in agriculture. So these are some of the things that I highly suggest investors to look at in terms of when you come to Taiwan and see some of these startups. So with that, I think I talked quite a bit about Taiwan, but with that, I think it's important for all of us here to think, right? What does that mean, right? So I think some of the implications going forward is we should all really broaden the definition of a startup. I think that is key. And I think one of the things Asia, Taiwan included, has really struggled with the idea of a startup, right? And if you ask anyone who is not in the industry and ask them what is a startup, they usually think of two young sort of graduates, maybe dropouts. They work in their garage and build this amazing app, and then they will become billionaires, right? Yes, that's one option. But there are so many other ways that you see in Asia ecosystem that is changing. So I think it's important for us to broaden that definition. For us, it's actually, that's exactly what we've seen, right? We've seen startups that came in and they develop a product, and within the first 2 years, they will have $1 million US dollar contract. Right? Are they startups? Are they not? It's actually very difficult to define what is a startup now, right? And another thing is there's this thing, small business, right? A lot of the startup investment model, I will talk about this later on, this whole unicorn concept. Everyone is crazy about unicorns, and we're crazy about funding, Series A, Series B, and so on and so forth. But if you really think about it, that's only one way of growing a business. It's with a serious rounds of cash. It's super important for certain types of business, but not all, right? So in Taiwan, you see, and in Asia as well, different types of new business, right? You can call them new business, you can call them SMEs, but different types of business, different types of startups require different types of growth model. And it's dangerous for all of us to think there's only one growth model for startup. Last, the demographics of startup founders is evolving, right? Again, if you notice all these tech conferences, maybe in here, Next Rise, and all these tech conferences, we go everywhere in the world. I think generally, if you look at the startup founders, their age is getting a little bit older, right? They come in with a little bit more experience, maybe corporate experience or otherwise. So I think that is also changing, right? So you get a mix of people instead of just one type where technologists, young, and just building this one single product. Okay. All right. So another interesting thing is Taiwan, because as you know, Taiwan, we have a population of around 21 million. So by definition, our local market is not that big. So every startup wants to go abroad, and that's actually one of our missions to help them to go overseas, right? And this is the survey from our startups. So of course they think of US, Japan, Southeast Asia, and because most of it is because our program is known as more international. So a lot of our teams, they have founders from overseas, right? And as a result, they have a stronger ambition to go overseas. What does that mean, right? If you think about it, right? Outside within Asia, maybe outside China, outside India, maybe outside Indonesia, every country, the population is probably a bit too small, correct? Whether it's Taiwan, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, even Korea. Korea has about 50 million. Individually, the market is never big enough, right, to sustain a massive unicorn type startups. So I think that is an interesting thing, and that is why we are seeing a lot more soft landing and exchange programs, right? And that is one of the focus that we have been having for the last year or so, is for us to build all these relationships within Asia. I think right now the Asia startup scene is still very much driven from the country level, which is important, right? Because if you look at everyone, we've been working so hard for the last 5, 6, 7 years to build our local startup ecosystem, right? Because we have nothing. Everyone, same thing. Throughout Asia, everything's new, right? Even if you talk about Hong Kong, they started maybe 8 years ago or 10 years ago, pretty much the same time, nothing. So what we do, we copy a lot of stuff from overseas, and then just start working on different programs. And even some of the investors, if you notice some of the investors, they were never VCs before, right? Everyone is very new. So we have to understand, collectively, we need to present Asia better. Because I think without presenting Asia better, it's difficult to get major investors coming in. We see the Vision Fund and so on, they're still very much driven through countries, right? But I think it's an interesting model how we should look at potentially connecting Asia through cities, right? Instead of purely just from a national level. And another thing that's really interesting is what do startups really need, right? One of the things we have been observing, because we have been providing content to startups, and I don't know whether that's the same thing in Korea. 5, 10 years ago, most of the startup seminars and coaching is about pitching, right? Everyone talks about pitching. Let's get some teams to pitching, right? Pitching competition, pitching practice. But if you notice, the startups have become a lot more sophisticated these days, right? Most startups, even they are still just graduates, the way they present, the pitch skill set is a lot more advanced. So what they need is something else now, right? So they are not just, we give them general coaching and just tell them how to pitch in 5 minutes. Most teams, even regardless of level of competency, most of them do quite well in those pitching. So they are actually demanding for something a lot more complex, a lot more customized. Okay, so one of the things, we have Brian here. Brian helps us look at investor relationships, and we have a We have built these strong networks of investors. So if any of the investors you want to look at our Taiwan deals, please connect with us. We have an investor newsletter. It's all free to get to see some of the latest development in Taiwan. Again, what does that mean, right? So I think there are a few things that I think we need to consider, right? Some of the things that the previous gentleman has mentioned about the seed stage. A lot of people talk about Asia. There's a gap between seed and sort of pre-A level. I think it's still a challenge, right? If you look at some of the VCs in Taiwan, and I'm not sure whether it's the same thing in Korea, but I noticed similar to a lot of other places, the stage where it's somewhere, I mean, before anything less than 500K US is okay, but somewhere between 500K to maybe 2 mil US, that's where we have a major gap, right? And I think that is where, when there's a gap that, no matter how many Series A or B people try to pump money in, there's just not enough deals. So I think that is an important thing. Investment models, I think that's, the reason is some Taiwanese startups, when they do well, when they get their first round of investments, they actually start making money, right? So especially if they build something that is very much connected with the whole supply chain. In Taiwan, the whole high-tech industry, the supply chain is so well planned out, right? So if you do a niche right, you can make money fairly early on. So the question is, okay, do we need more investment or not? Or how should we go the stealth mode, right? Start making money and not let anyone knows about it. So that is important. Another thing that this morning Alan talks about this, if some of you were here from KK Fund, about exits. I think the biggest problem with Asia, we can talk about all this ecosystem, all these incubators or accelerators. We have so many accelerators and incubators in Taiwan. But nothing matters if we don't have enough exits. We desperately need more exits. And exits can mean different things, IPO, M&A, because you need founders, to be honest, to make money. We need these guys who know how to run new business to make some money. It doesn't have to be billionaires. I mean, it would be great if they do. But if they don't, they start making money, then they will start contributing back to the ecosystem. That is super crucial. And that is why, as we build out our ecosystem, one of the things we have been keeping really long-term relationships with some of these founders, right? So when they contribute back, sometimes it's through investments, but hopefully it's even more than that, right? So we provide mentorships and coaching and so on and so forth. Very important. And I think having alternative exit strategies is important. So we should not just think about, unicorn is the only solution for all. Mentors, right? So back to TSS, so one of the things we've done is we have been growing our mentors network, and we have mentors not just from Taiwan, but all over the world. We have over 100 mentors now, and provide office hours and connecting them to these people in the industries. All right, implications. I think one of the things, and I don't know whether this is the same in Korea, right? The whole office hour concept is very much a westernized concept, right? So you have this very experienced person, the staff goes in, they will chat immediately, they get connected, they get inspired, and then they will do something really, really well. In Asia, we always have this very a courtesy culture, right? We see someone very senior, we don't know what to say, right? We get a bit nervous, right? And then usually because of the experienced person would be starting to coach the young person. Start saying, oh, this is wrong, you should make money earlier, right? And to be honest, if you still have that mindset, that is why I say it's very difficult for Asia to build something like WhatsApp. People talk about business model, I still don't know what's the business model for WhatsApp, right? So that is the sort of new concept that we need to have in Asia, right? Otherwise, how can we have even this simple, basic thing called WhatsApp, right? Another thing is, as much as we get all these mentors, we need to make sure these mentors, as much as all these experiences that they have, they need to know startups are run differently now. Business are run differently now. It's not about being good or bad, it's just different. Teams needs to be more agile. We need to experience things that we don't know before, right? There's no such thing as a 5 years financial forecast, which we all know is BS, right? Like, if you start a business today, if you can write a 5-year financial forecast, it's fake. right? So we need to understand some of these things. We cannot just force some of the old concepts into how business should be run in this days and age. Mentoring, I think mentoring is another thing. I think mentoring is important. If you find someone who is a really strong mentor, is important. But it's different from someone who can really connect you to the industry, right? It's fine if I talk to you, that you understand the Korean market, you tell me what happens in Korea. That's inspiring. That's useful. But more useful is you can actually connect me, for example, to a distributor in Korea. That is important, right? So I think a lot of the mentoring, one of the things we have been focusing on is, for mentoring, we focus not just talk. We want to see action. Without action, mentoring feels very empty, right? So that's another thing. And I think it's common, again, very common across Asia, right? We have this culture thing, we're very polite, we don't dare to ask things because, very senior, I don't know what to ask him, right? But we need to overcome that, right? If we want to build all these world-changing startups, world-changing business, we need to adopt a new mindset. Conferences. So as I said, TSS, we have been to conferences all around the world. This year we went to Collision, we went to Rise in Hong Kong, we went to TechSource. In Thailand, we're here. In Korea, we're going to TechCrunch. We're going to Vietnam. We're going to all over the world. Every year, we travel all around the world, and we've been to all these, and we've seen how these conferences have developed, right? So I think it's one of the interesting things is, as these startup conferences, so basically the key ones are, the Web Summit guys, they do Web Summit, they do Rise, and so on. Slush, key sort of startup conference, right? They have their brand, they look super cool and everything like that. But we're also seeing the traditional tech conferences, they have their startup zone, right? Super interesting. So I think that is we will see in the next few years, perhaps some of these will converge. Because generic general startup conference is useful, but we're seeing a lot of competitions, right? Just like co-working space. Everywhere is the same thing. So many co-working spaces, but not enough community, right? And another interesting thing is, we are already hearing that from our startups, our members, and I wonder again if that's what you guys are seeing. Should I be going to this generic startup conference? For example, like Rise in Hong Kong, generic. You're going to Hong Kong, but it's not about Hong Kong. It's about that conference. You meet people, you meet everyone in the startup ecosystem, or do you want to go to something more local? Local means you have more connections locally, right? Like next Rise, right? You certainly meet more Korean contacts here than Rise in Hong Kong, correct? So what is more important, right? Should we go to a conference that is more generic? Or should we go to this IoT tech conference in, Paris? So these are, I think there will be more convergence, and I hope we'll have more convergence. And it's important for startups to decide where to go. 5 years ago, it's very simple, just 2 or 3. Now we actually have a lot more options. And I think there's a need, again, I keep preaching this, and hopefully one day it will happen. We need this Asia conference. We need a conference that have an Asia brand that connects to all these Asian players, and maybe we can host it in different cities every year. It's important, right? Because if we still look at ourselves individually, it's very hard to attract enough foreign capital to be interested in our individual country and our individual startups. So I think if there's I still don't know if there's a sort of this one Asian-focused startup tech conference, and I think that could be really interesting. Okay, community. So we build a lot of our programs. One of the things we spend a lot of time, not just so we do sort of different parties or mixers, gatherings, but we also spend a lot of time creating our contents. One of the things I feel like in Asia, when you build out an ecosystem, you get speakers and talk and sharing, but not enough localized content, right? As I said, the way you do fundraising here in Asia is different from US, right? But most of the time when you go to this course, they just teach you the most US way, which you pitch something and people will randomly give you $500,000 US. It just doesn't work in Asia, right? So we need to provide content that is relevant, that is customized for Asia, and it's something that we've been doing quite a lot. This is something, a bit of advertisement. So we are doing this market entry bootcamp, market entry to Korea, right? So we're inviting key players in Korea to speak, to learn about how do you actually get into the Korea ecosystem, from legal standpoint, from even things like business etiquette, right? Little things like how do you shake hands, right? How do you exchange name cards? Everywhere is different. I think Korea do it like this or something, yes, right? Japan is different, and Singapore, Hong Kong is different, right? So little things like that is important. And that is, and for us it's amazing, right? So we come to Korea and we meet all these, we have sponsors from Orange Fab, from Kita, and they're so welcoming. They just really help us build this event, and to us it's the best way to connect with the local ecosystems. It's great, we shake hands, we take some photos, but what's more important is we actually do something together. When we actually do something together, we understand how the culture and everything, how it works, how do we communicate through emails, or online, or Kakao, everything like that is really important. And one of the things is, as I said, customized content. One of the things we have done for four years ago in Taiwan, we decided we would want to do this fundraising, or we call it term sheet bootcamp. It's a 3-day course, but the course is crazy. So what we did was we pulled together basically all the investors in Taiwan, right? We have like over 30 speakers, all the key major investors, startup investors in Taiwan, and all the key startup founders. They come in and teach the course, right? 3 days, and every time the biggest complaints we get after the training is they want it to be 5 days. And we say, no, we don't want to do 5 days, too long. But we've done 4 times in Taiwan now. But the crazy thing is then we go, okay, does it work overseas? So let's do Japan. You would never imagine like a fundraising course in English in Japan. No, we did it, and it turned out to be fantastic. We did it in Thailand, Bangkok. In fact, we've done it twice, right? This year we're going to Vietnam. We're running the same course, right? What we do, we have used the localized content. We get the local investors, right? Local players. So that is the best way for startups to learn. And it's important to look at, another thing is about these events and meetups. In Taiwan, I don't know whether it's the same thing in Korea, there's so many different programs. It's actually difficult because there are too many support, you don't know where to go. That's actually the problem right now we're facing. Too many programs, too many events, right? And every time it's like this happy hour thing, or this pitch competition, too many. For startup, I think if I join the startup ecosystem now, I think it's actually, although there are more support now, it's actually more difficult to get the right support, right? And I think that is why we need, hopefully, again, this is my dream, my vision, hopefully one day we have more of a shared calendar. So we don't run the same event, at least the big events, on the same day, right? So we need to share, right? A lot of people, when they think in Taiwan or even in whole of Asia, there are too many startup programs, and their logic, the first reaction is, let's consolidate, and I always think that's a wrong approach. There's not time to consolidate yet. We need more resources. But what we need now is sharing what we're doing, right? So let's use the same resource, let's have all these programs out there, but make sure we're more aligned, more coordinated, and I think that is super important. Okay, it's interesting how we started. We, for our program, we have a lot of corporates very nicely, they talk to us and they want to offer sort of discounts, to startups and in a way promoting their service, right? So AWS is super, we're grateful for them to offer us a lot of credit so we can offer to our startups. But what happened in the last 2 years? So we have built all these relationships, right? So basically we're helping them push the servers or products to the startups. But one thing we're learning as well for the last 2 years, corporates themselves, right, also want to innovate. And we are, as a result, we are building different programs for corporates. And this is something I believe in the next 3 to 5 years, corporates are going to be the key players in startup ecosystem in Asia. That's going to be the whole perspective is very much game changing. Yeah, so as we grow, hopefully we'll continue to grow with the system, right? One of the things I always say, as an ecosystem builder, what we were doing 5 years ago is very different from what we need to do now. Teams are more sophisticated, what their needs is very specific, and we need to be much more connected. You know, and when teams started 5 years ago, they said they want to go to the US. Now they realize going to US is very difficult, right? The great thing about US is people think US is one market. Depending on what you do, it's not one market. There's 20 different states, right? West Coast, East Coast, already very different, right? So even China, right? Setting up an office in Beijing and Shanghai are totally different things. So I think teams are smarter now. They know, no, it's not just going to US. I need to be a lot more specific. I need to have a game plan, right? And as a result, they see more values operating, expanding within Asia. So I think there's a golden opportunity here for all of us. So we're doing 3 things. One is we need to be more connected. We call that One Alliance. Not that we are building that one alliance for ourselves, but we have a mindset of connecting with everyone. Hopefully we can share and just leverage each other's abilities. One platform meaning all these resources, right? Mentors, investors, also corporates. We need to know, we need to learn how to interact with them, how to extract the most out of those guys that is beneficial to startups. And One Economy, the concept is we desperately need localized content. We just don't have enough localized content. We use very much generic startup content. You know, a classic example is for startups here, you probably have heard of Business Model Campus, right? BMC, we all completed. BMC is a perfect tool for you to think, right? But I've seen in a lot of the Asian culture, we have an urge to just complete it, right? We just want to fill it in. Oh, done. No, that's not the point. Right? So we need to understand the Asian culture and how we learn and develop our skill set in a different way. Roll ahead, right? Before I get to the final part, I'll talk a little bit about what I see are the key trends in the next 3 to 5 years. Disclaimer, I'm not very good at predicting. If I'm any good at predicting, I should be investors. So I'm not. But I will say a few things. First of all, we have to understand our Asian ecosystem, it was created on the fly. I always say we had a big bang approach, right? So we have nothing, we go, oh, we need startups, right? So what do? We just copy, right? Let's copy the Silicon Valley model, right? Get some of the speakers over there, right? We have to take on the fake it till you make it mindset, right? So, oh, we need some VCs. Who wants to be a VC? Oh, let me be a VC. I've never done a VC before, I've never invested in anything, I've never started a startup, but let me be a VC. So we have a lot of people just, take on certain roles, right? Because we created from nothing, right? We did not have, if you look at Silicon Valley, they have those tech entrepreneurs back in before 2000, right? That was the crowd that makes some money and continue and survive through the dot-com bubble and continue that whole thing. In Asia, we have a little bit of that, but not really, right? We only have the O2O model, so 8 to 10 years ago, the whole Groupon thing, but we never had a robust ecosystem, right? So we had to focus on, our sectors, our city, and so on and so forth. As a result, right, I think all Asian ecosystems, and please correct me when you ask questions, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we're all facing and asking similar questions. Right? We're facing similar challenges, right? Like early funding, market size is not big enough. Everywhere you go to Asia, they say the same thing, right? We are, perhaps as I said, duplicating some of the efforts, right? We're building all these great courses, conferences, but we are not sharing enough, right? Startups have more support, but they don't know what they really need to get. And as a result, if you really think about it, our ecosystem was just like a startup. Right? We just, let's build it, right? We don't even know what that looks like, what's the so-called product market fit, we don't know, we just had to build something, right? So that's a fact, right? That's what we are now. So I think there were few predictions I'll make. I think corporates are the new startups. If you look at corporates, every corporate, they will say, oh, I need to innovate. I don't know one corporate who will say, no, I don't need to innovate. I'll just stick with what I do. No one will dare to say that. The moment they say that, the share price will drop. Everyone say the same thing. But just like startups 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago in Asia, most of them, to be honest, they still really don't know what they need to do. So what they do is they set up an innovation program and they go, okay, let's talk to some startups. But as some of you investors or startups know, talking to a startup takes on a different skills because they take on a very different mindset, right? One of the things I always say is back in the 90s, if you're my age, you know, back in the 90s, one of the biggest skills everyone talks about was you need to know IT and business. If you know IT and business, then you will do really well. I believe now the key skills is you need to know corporates and you need to know startups, right? Very different mindset, very different skill set, but they need to work together. So as I mentioned previously, we're working with corporates now, but working with them, we understand there's still a huge barrier to overcome. You know, we know startups wants to match, right? Let's meet startups, meet all of them, but what's next, right? Because the key thing is a lot of the corporates, and CVC is the biggest thing, right? CVC drives the majority of the startup ecosystem in Japan, in Thailand, so corporates has a big hand in all this. But the thing is, a lot of times when corporates engage with startups, they have this one goal in mind. They want to solve this one particular solution, right? When you have that in mind, you know, it's not, whatever solution that you find is not going to be that innovative because you've defined your problem set already, right? You're not letting startups drive innovations. You're really just trying to find startups to address your one single questions or issues. That's very different from trying to be truly innovative. Consolidation across Asia, and I think that will happen. I think some of the, whether it's programs, whether it's startups, I expect and hope some of them will merge together. I actually hope some of the funds will work together. You know, individually, if everyone working on this, their own $20 million US fund is very difficult, right? So I hope and I believe it will happen. There will be a lot more consolidation. Even conferences like this, right? If we, you know, do this together in an Asia sort of brand or image, it's going to benefit everyone. So, and a key one is really, as we look at this word, almost is brought up in every single startup conference, especially keynotes. How many unicorns do you have in Korea? How many unicorns do you have in Taiwan, in anywhere? Unicorns is a great indication of how the startup ecosystem has developed under that, as I said, the Silicon Valley model, right? You pump money in, you get it up, dominate that market, win, and then you do something else, right? Because we all know, like, apart from Airbnb, Uber don't make money, Slack doesn't make money, like most of them don't make money. They just want to dominate the market and figure out what they need to do. We work, like, don't make money whatsoever, right? But the whole model is built to that stage, get that money to that scale, and then we'll figure out what we need to do. And that's amazing, don't get me wrong. I'm all for the whole blitz scaling thing, right? But that should not be the only solution or the only way we look at startups or investments. In Asia, there are so many more of the so-called middle tiers companies that we should design and define ways to invest and support these guys, which works very differently from that Silicon Valley unicorn models. All right, so before we go to Q&A, I'll just quickly introduce some startups. We brought 4 teams over here. They're all downstairs. Please go and visit them, talk to them. So first one is Sell Wine. It's basically a wine storage system, so you can scan and keep your wine. But more interestingly, there are 2 things. They can allow you to do offline storage, so that actually you can easily store your wine, right? They also allow C2C transactions, so you can sell your wine, transaction more amongst the wine lovers. For them, it's interesting, they have, the website is in Chinese, but the apps is, they have a Korean language already. In fact, one of the reasons why they're here is, apart, of course, outside Taiwan, Korea has the most users in Asia. So I don't know, maybe Koreans love wines. But that's why we're here, and they're very excited to understand more about the Korean market. Cloud is AI video content system. So what it does is a few things you can use their technology. You can basically send them this full soccer match or basketball game, and it will automatically create highlights for you. Right? You will say, well, why do you need to create highlights? Well, highlights, of course, it reduces manpower, but the key thing is, if you know about internet marketing, you need to do a lot of A/B testing, right? So you need to create a lot of different slight variations of those highlights to test which one is the most popular, right? So that is why so with this tool, you can create multiple versions of those short video clips and use it for your internet marketing purpose. So very useful to very advanced. They have they can organize, create videos not just through highlights but also through keywords and contents. Again, I think they're available in Korean language as well, right? So please visit them. Match is perhaps not as big of a topic. People talk about KOL these days, but KOL is still big, right? It's just that no one sort of talked about them like 3 years ago. In fact, I think if you want to explore to a local market, it's a much smarter way to engage with KOLs than just through Facebook ads and Google, right? So they basically connect with a lot of the influencers with corporates, right? So if you want to engage with local influencers, local KOLs, this is a great platform for you to use. And the last one, I think I've got it here somewhere, Fargo. It's the smallest vacuum compressor in the whole world, very powerful. So you can use one of those plastic bags, put your luggage in and use this device. Super powerful, and will just compress the whole thing. No sound, no air. You won't, if you touch it, there's no air coming out. Very sophisticated engineering. So please, again, they have the whole product downstairs. Please check it out. It's a great piece of engineering here. So with that, thank you everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Yao, for your presentation. And personally, I gotta check out those booths for sure.